Shalom to all. Today's office is Darm Daf Ayin Gimel. We are starting the third line, the second word on the line. And today's office sponsor, Lilu Nishmas, Mars, Miriam Zara, Basa B'Yaakov Moshe, her Neshama should have an Aliyah. And Lilu Nishmas, Mars, Freidechai Yobela, Basa V'Yitzchak Tzvi, her Neshama should have an Aliyah. Now we're in the middle of discussing whether or not a husband actually has to hear the neder his wife makes before he's made for it, or could he be made for a neder without even hearing it? And we haven't yet provided a conclusive answer. The Gemara continues with this. Ryan Bar Chama asks the following question. Cheresh Ma'ush Yafar Le'ishtai. Is a cheresh, someone who's deaf, is he able to be made for his wife's nedarim? So what are the two tzadim? Imtim Slemmer, if you want to say that Baal Mefer B'lai Shmiya, a husband is able to be made for his wife's nedarim without hearing them. Perhaps that's only Mishum Debar Mishmahu, because he's a person that could technically hear the nedarim. Aval cheresh, Dolad Bar Mishmahu, but a cheresh that can't possibly hear the nedarim because he's deaf, he would not be able to be made for his wife's nedarim. And this is similar to the following, Hainu Reb Zera. It's just like Reb Zera. Reb Zera says, Kol Roy Lebila Ein Bila Ma'akeves Bai, anything which is able to be mixed. So mixing it is not ma'akev, but anything which is not able to be mixed, bila ma'akeves by, not mixing it will be ma'akev it. This is in reference to a carbon mincha, which is made up of flour and oil and other things. Let's say a person says, I'm going to give a mincha which is 61 isarines. The Gemara says he has to put 60 in one kli and 1 in a different kli. That's because the majority that's allowed to be put into one kli is 60 isarines so that it can be mixed properly. More than that, it can't be mixed properly. The Gemara asks, why does it have to be mixed properly? We know that we don't have to mix a mincha, so just leave it unmixed and then we can have 61 in one kli. So Reb Zera answers what we just said. If it's able to be mixed properly, kol haroy lebila, so ein bila ma'akeves bay, you don't actually have to mix it. However, if it's unable to be mixed properly, that would be more than 60 in one kli, so then mixing it is ma'akev. So it'd be the same thing over here with the cheresh, with the deaf person. If a person's able to hear his wife's nedarim, so it could be that he doesn't have to hear them in order to be made for them. But a person who can't hear his wife's nedarim, perhaps he's not able to be made for them. Now the Gemara continues with the other tzad, oidilmor, perhaps, v'shama isha loy ma'akev. Maybe when the pasuk says v'shama isha and her husband hears it and then he's made for it, that's not ma'akev, meaning it's lav davka that her husband has to hear the neder. The pasuk is just simply telling us that usually a husband hears his wife's neder and then he's ma'akev it, but not that he has to hear his wife's neder, and that would mean that even if he's deaf and he can hear his wife's neder, he would be able to be made for it. So Rava, he answers, Tashma, the pasuk says, v'shama isha, parat le'ishes cheresh, that excludes the wife of a cheresh, shma mina, so we have a very clear raya that a cheresh is unable to be made for his wife's nedarim. Ibailu, they ask another question. Is a husband able to be made for two of his wives nedarim in one shot? This fellow has two wives, Rachel and Leah, both of them made nedarim, and he just wants to be made for them in one shot. He'll say one statement of hafara, and that's going to be made for them both at once. But what are the two sides to this? Oisa dafka, when the pasuk says Yoni Oisa, that he's going to restrain her, meaning withhold the neder, is a dafka that we're only talking about her neder, meaning one neder, or lav dafka, or is a lav dafka, and he can be made for the neder of more than one of his wives at the same time. So Ravina, he answers, Tashma, ein mashkin shtei saitis ka'achas, no giving two saitis to drink at the same time, because her heart is going to be strengthened or haughty because of her friend. Now, what's this referring to? So we know that a saita is a woman who's suspected of being adulterous. We bring her to the Beis HaMikdash, we go through a whole procedure, and all the way at the end of the procedure, she drinks water, and that water is going to check whether or not she really was adulterous. Now, what the Tanakama just told us is that we're not going to give two saitas to drink at the same time, is because one of them is going to get encouragement from the other one to drink. She's going to say, oh, that one's drinking, so I'm going to drink as well. And the whole reason for the entire procedure of this saita is to try to convince her to admit to her wrongdoing and not to end up drinking the water. Rabbi Yehuda says, that's not the reason for it. It's because it says in the pasuk, V'hishka Aisa. And what do we learn from this word Aisa? Levada, her alone. Same thing over here by Nedarim. When it says in the pasuk, Yoni Aisa, it means only her. He can only be made for one of his wives Nedarim at a time, not two of them at the same time. And moving on to Ayin Gimel Beis on top with the brand new Mishnah. By Geras Shashasa Yod Beis Chaydesh. A by Geras that waited 12 months. Ve'almana Lamed Yaim. And an almana 30 days. Now what's this talking about? So this is referring to a woman who's in Arusa. She accepted Kiddushin. And she waited this amount of time till Nisuin, and Nisuin hadn't happened yet. So Rabbi Eliezer says, since right now her husband is chayiv to feed her, because this amount of time passed, either 12 months or 30 days, so now her husband, who's really her arus, is chayiv to feed her, so Yafer, he's allowed to be made for her nedarim as well, meaning he's allowed to be made for her nedarim on his own, and he doesn't need her father's involvement. The Chachamim say, Ein habal mefer ad shtikanos l'reshusai. The husband is not allowed to be made for a nedarim until she 100% comes into his rishos. There has to be nisuin Erusin is not enough. Even though there was a 12-month waiting period or a 30-day waiting period, he can't be made for her Nedarim. And the Gemara tells us, Amar Rabbi, Rabbi says, Rabbi Eliezer, Mishnah Rishayna, Amru Davar Echad. Rabbi Eliezer and the Mishnah Rishayna, they say the same thing. What's the Mishnah Rishayna? Dinan, we have a Mishnah. Noisan lebasula yud beis chaydesh lefarnes atzma. A basula is given 12 months to be mefarnes herself. That means when a basula accepts kiddushin, she has 12 months to get ready for the chasana. He gave yud beis chaydesh. Once a 12-month mark comes and her husband didn't marry her, the chasana didn't happen yet. She eats from him, meaning he has to pay for her food. And she's even allowed to eat truma if he's a kayin. A yavam is not going to feed her truma, meaning if she was engaged and then her auras died and she's waiting to marry the yavam, she's not allowed to eat truma even after this 12-month mark passes. And this Mishnah continues with a number of different examples. Let's say she was waiting 6 months of this time by the husband, and then he died, and then she's waiting another 6 months by the yavam. Or it could be that she was waiting all 12 months minus 1 day by the Baal, then her auras died and she completed that last day by the Yavam, or she waited all those 12 months by the Yavam minus 1 day, which means she got engaged, sadly her auras died after a day, and then the remainder of the 12 months she was waiting for the Yavam. In all these cases, Einai Chelas B'Truma, she doesn't need Truma. As we Mishnah Rishayna, this is the Mishnah Rishayna. However, Bezin Shalachreim Amru, a Bezin that came afterwards said, Einai Ishai Chelas B'Truma, Ashetikanis L'Chuppah, a woman doesn't get to eat Truma until she actually goes to Chuppah. Once there's a proper Nisuin, then she gets to eat Truma, but not before then. So Rabbi is telling us, it seems to be that Rabbi Eliezer and the Mishnah Rishayna are saying the same thing. Rabbi Eliezer holds that after this 12-month mark, they're considered married to the extent that he's allowed to be made for her Nedarim. The Mishnah Rishayna holds that after this 12-month mark, they're considered married to the extent that she's allowed to eat Truma. So it seems to be that they're saying the same thing. Abaye told Rabbi, Dilmalaihi, perhaps that's not so. We could say that Ad Kan Loika Ashmi in Mishnah Rishayna, El Lamechel B'Truma, then the Mishnah Rishayna is only telling us this halacha in regards to eating Truma. The Rabbanon, because an Arusa is only not allowed to eat Truma midrabanan. Really, midairaisa and arusa is allowed to eat truma. The Chachamim just had a number of different chashashas that as an arusa they said she's not allowed to eat truma, but since the whole reason why she's not allowed to eat truma is only midrabanan, so therefore once this 12-month mark comes, those chashashas fall away, and we say that she's allowed to eat truma. Aval nedarim, but in regards to her husband being made for her nedarim, da'iraisa, we know that da'iraisa and aros is not allowed to be made for her nedarim by himself. Eimolai, I might say that the Mishnah Rishayna does not agree to Rabbi Eliezer. And furthermore, if Ad Kan L'Shamas the Rabbi Eliezer, then we would only say that Rabbi Eliezer says what he says in our Mishnah, El Gabi Nedarim. He only says it regarding Nedarim. Kid Rav Pinchas Mishmei de Rava. What does Rav Pinchas say in the name of Rava? Damer, he says, Kol Nederes Aldas Ba'alehi Nederes. That any woman that makes a neder, she makes it Aldas her husband. Which means that when she makes a neder, she's making it Aldas. I'm only making this neder if my husband agrees to it. So Rabbi Eliezer is saying that it's after this 12-month mark that she has in mind she's making this neder Aldas her husband. And that's why, even though they're not fully married, her husband's still able to be made for her nedarim. Aval truma, but when it comes to her eating truma, afilu midrabanan nami le'achal. Even though the only thing that's preventing her from eating truma is this din d'Rabbanan, still Rabbi Eliezer would say that she's not allowed to eat truma. So Abaye just showed that Rabbi Eliezer and the Mishnah Rishayna are not necessarily saying the same thing. We're going to stop here for the day, pick up tomorrow with a brand new Mishnah. For now, everyone should have a wonderful day.